to The Truth in This Art. Thank you for tuning into my conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. I am your host, Rob Lee. Today, I am thrilled to have the pleasure of again speaking with my next guest, a self-taught contemporary artist, graphic designer, self-proclaimed propaganda artist who's based in Washington, D.C. His work focuses on portraying the splendor and the strength of Black people while emphasizing the importance of Black representation in mainstream pop culture. Please welcome Maurice James Jr. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, man. I was looking forward to this. It's, the first interview was really great, man. So I'm sure this will be just as dope.
Yeah, I like to look at the trajectory of doing interviews as like a ball rolling down a hill. It just gets progressively worse. So, you know, and I kind of do these intros a little bit differently. So as I, kind of revisit, and I think it's always good for folks who are listening to this one to always even go back and listen to the first one to get sort of that trajectory. Not to see how much I've fallen off, but also to get a sense of like, oh, this is more of the story. This is another chapter of this creative person's story, this artist's story. So, I think that there's a lot of energy, a lot of juice in how we present ourselves. I think it's more power, and off the top of the dome, who are you? Creatively, what's your story, sort of give us that introduction of who you are.
Oh man, Maurice James Jr. is a communication-based visual propaganda artist, man. I'm really trying to just discuss a couple things with Black people in various ways. So I use poster design and propaganda art to kind of get those conversations kind of percolating and going. So yeah, man, just always, like I told you earlier, always been a creative kid, man. Always just enjoyed just a creative space. And when I went full time as an artist, man, I never looked back because it's just that's my realm. That's where I belong. Like the people that I meet, it's all beautiful and positive, man. And I meet so many different type of creative people, and we all kind of have this own funny unspoken fraternity of just trying to just do crazy work out here. We know being an artist is a little nuts, but it's dope though, regardless.
And I love hearing sort of the full time. I love hearing the propaganda component. I love that because, when you love a thing, you love a creative pursuit, you're speaking a language, you're able to use your creative work as a vehicle to get out your ideas, to maybe and sometimes feed yourself, to kind of do your lifestyle. That matters a lot. So it's great to hear that, and great to hear that it's at the root of propaganda. Propaganda is
it's pretty heavy, and sometimes it's a dirty word. And like I said, even explaining that to people when I was even some of the galleries I worked at, they was well, don't call it propaganda, call it something else. I'm well, that's what it is though. Yeah. Because some people are afraid of it. So because they always think it's gonna be for a sinister kind of evil reason, but it's just communication-based art, man. I'm just trying to use my creative ideas to push you into thinking about something differently, Yeah. And Black people, I've never really had that full stop as a one person focused on just that thing. We had a couple cats in the past that did it, especially Emery for the Black Panther Party. Yeah. But that was just one kind of instance of it, So I love to just just be in that space to just provide that.
Yeah. And then having your roots being from Philly, right? Mm-hmm. And now we're here in DC where you're currently based. We're in Eaton, we're radio right now. So big shout out to Eaton for providing the facilities.
1,000%, man.
So having cities that, I know this is a district, but cities, and I'm being from Baltimore, having cities that are in this mid-Atlantic, Northeast that are Black cities. Yeah. And being a person that's speaking about something that's, as you said, it's propaganda or what have you, and it could be a little heavy, but kind of speaking to these things that we all kind of know, but we're not always allowed to talk about them, as you were touching on. Yeah. Maybe we should, maybe you should call it something else versus propaganda. Maybe it should be thought art. Nah, it's propaganda, player.
Yeah, propaganda, man, because, there's only one word to kind of really stamp it down for what it is. And I think, and I've been learning this as I've been growing doing this work, that there's so many different ways of utilizing propaganda. I'm doing a show about trains, and that's pretty much propaganda, poster work for trains and train system for the Underground Railroad. And the next show could be about anything else because I've just learned how to wield that aesthetic to to do whatever I want to do with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back a little bit, and we all remember our firsts. What was the first piece of like art that you made? Like, you know, and also I think even in that there's a little bit of a definition in that, right?
Yeah,
where it's like, yeah, I used to draw these sketches. It's like, no. When you got to the point where you're like, this is art right here.
Yeah. So I mean, it wasn't until I want to say my first full-on exhibit at a gallery, and I had my work professionally printed on that beautiful paper that I used, and then like professionally framed with the glass and the museum set up and everything. I was like, oh, like this is like, all right, this is like some real deal art stuff going on here, right? Yeah. And then the response also was beautiful. So I'm like, all right, it took me a while to even say I'm an artist, because I just had so much respect for the game. But yeah, once I started seeing the pieces kind of like coming to fruition and fully done, fully finished, and fully framed, I'm like, all right, yeah, so this is some art shit right here. Yeah. Which one? I can't pick which one that I saw first that I can decide. But if people go back to see my first show, I could send you a link to it. You can send people to it. But this Cleopatra one I did this beautiful one, this X-Men poster with Beast and James Baldwin.
Yeah.
So when I saw that one finished, I'm like, all right, yeah, this and that one, probably that one, because that one kind of summed up my childhood in a multi-layered and adulthood kind of way, because like the Baldwin pieces and the Beast from X-Men in the 90s is like kind of a combination of like how I think about combining these images or whatever to make them all make sense. So yeah, that was when it was like it got real. Yeah.
I love that. It's funny, like, you know, in doing this, and I kind of struggle at times with doing a podcast or what have you. Like, you know, you and I were talking a little bit before we got into like, you know, this interview in earnest about creative classism, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, I start thinking about what does that mean, and you actually asked me what does that mean, and you know, it's I don't know if I have that same sort of thing when it comes to like doing this as a creative like practice, because I don't think it's old enough to even be considered in that conversation, or, you know, because it's treated like content, you know, and, you know, is there a canon for podcasts? What does that look like? You know what I mean? And can podcasts be creative? Are podcasts art, or are they archival? Is it anthropological?
Yeah, I would say for the good ones, yes. Because there's a few, no, seriously, like some are just like, you know, dead air, and it's just, you know, and I think they're made to be that. Some people just like, you know, my wife likes trash TV. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's that like kind of privileged like aspect to some things, but there are a few that's very informative. Like, they are time capsules. You know, I think there's one that I listened to, one song, and they give a historical background of a song and all the nuances and ins and outs of, like, you know, the creative process and everything. So those are, those don't really have a time, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think good podcasts don't have a time. You can just pick it up anytime and just like, you're not dated, you know what I mean? So
they have the evergreen.
Right, yeah. So I think in that space, yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because you know, I start, like, when I ask people questions, I try to apply it to what I do creatively, and it's like, all right, what is my first thing? And it's like, you know, I took a long time as a podcaster, even before getting to a stage of saying, like, no, this is done for this. Other stuff might have been something else. Yeah. It might have been something driving towards where I'm at now. But when I look back at, you know, sort of these steps, I look at, like, you know, when I did something that was very concerted, and you have to feel it, I guess is what I'm getting at. And when you're like, yeah, I've dabbled, I've done some of this, I've done some of that, it's like, nah, this is some art shit right here. This was top tier, archival, podcast, journalistic, whatever. Yeah.
It's that thing. I was thinking about it, because people listen to less music on the radio now, but there's been multiple trips. Me and my wife been driving from DC to Philly or Jersey to visit her family, and we're listening to basically talk radio the entire time. Yeah. And I was just like surprised, like, damn, talk radio was like actually back. And if like the most informative ones are the ones that kind of keep you engaged while you're just driving or whatever, and you're learning something. So, you know, if people want to learn something, some people don't want to just, you know. But I think for the people that do, podcasts are dope for that reason.
Yeah, and I think it's this notion where, again, going to the sort of the art piece of it, where you don't want something to feel rarefied, right? And I want to get your take on this, of where, like, sort of the different classifications of art. Like, you work in sort of a visual, right? And, you know, if someone does sort of this, like, I don't see the life in that, or I don't know about this, what's your process? And they start to, it's like, I'm very simple. I don't know anything, but it's like, it looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
You made it, what was the intent in it, and ask questions about it versus trying to interrogate whether it's worthy of your attention creatively.
The interrogation comes from just the value system. They're trying to figure out how much they're willing to spend on, because they want to know how much time you spend on this. I tell people every time, I've been working on this shit my entire life. Yeah. Because I've been like conjuring these ideas, or even the history that I learned as a child, even the history that I study as an adult, all completely sums up me putting together all the pieces, because it's a hodgepodge of everything that I've learned over the course of my time. So when I get that question about process and time, like forever, it took me a long time to think about this and to get it this good, man, like to get it this precise. So yeah, that's just a way of them deciding how much they want to spend on it.
Yeah, put these 10,000 hours in. It's just like, when I go out there and I'm like, oh, well, so Rob, your body of work, it's like, this is weird how we're playing this back and forth. And I was like, well, I've done 2,000 podcasts. Right. I don't know what you want from me. And if I'm putting in 2 to 3 hours per, you can do the math yourself, player.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot of time.
It is. Yeah. And even as a teacher, and I now move to this sort of second thing, but I think it ties, where, for me, being someone that's sharing something that I've learned is important to me. That's part of my creative sensibility. If I do anything creative, as I was, saying earlier, I wanted to do something, in film or what have you. That's at the root of it. Is like, I'm teaching someone something in this. Yeah. And, spending the last 6 months as an educator, 6 to 7 months as an educator, that aligns. Even doing this, like, chiefly when I do these interviews, it's like, if I just said, yo, Maurice, here's the microphone. Yeah. Go. And I'm going to be over here doing something else. Yeah. No, I'm trying to craft them. Like, I find this interesting, and I hope other people will. And I think you're very interesting. I think your work is very interesting.
Thank you, man.
So, absolutely. So helping to craft that conversation in that way, that's the thing.
Well,
that's the art.
It goes into that. I was about to get to that point. It goes into what me and my friend were talking about. At an exhibit that I had, it's called Automatic. It started a couple weeks ago, or last week, or whatever it was. But we were talking about like functional art, like art having a function, or does it need to have a function, or so I think people kind of struggle with like the functionality of work, because like some artists want the art to have complete function. I want my art to do something. I want to teach people everything, and some people don't want to make art because they want to make something that look good. Yeah. Right. So it's like when it comes to you asking me about like podcasting, I think it's a very functional art when done right. You know what I mean? And I think I always try to achieve the highest function on top of the fact that I want to make it beautiful in my work anyway. You know what I mean? I want to make it visually stunning and bright and colorful and interesting, but also wanted to be like very much on point for you to ask a lot of questions about the why. You know what I mean?
I've had that in the studio. One of the only pieces that I actually have from you is the card that you did, right? Yeah. So I have two creative altars in the studio. So the card that you did is on one of them. It's on the first one, and someone came in there during the studio visit. It's like, what's this? Yeah. I was like, so my man Maurice did this, right? Pop culture, right? Propaganda, right? And they're like, go on. Yeah. There's
a lot of questions involved with that, I think, but everything, even these stickers on this wall right here, all were made to like say or present something or advertise something or whatever. It could be a name, could be anything. Yeah. So it's always been a functional art, but it's always been like that, right? It's always been something, everything, it's just like disposable boards, like you stick it to stuff. But I just chose to like give it a fine art tinge.
Would it be, how can I ask? So if it's something that feels a bit more accessible, like not rarefied, right, do you think that's part of that equation where, let's say, I have a design, I can pay someone to make a design, I can make a design and then get some stickers done. That's not in that class, or even something as accessible as, you saw what I brought with me. I have my studio set up right here.
100%, yeah.
And it's just like, well, I don't know if that really counts. Where's your full studio? Like, we're in a studio, but I'm using this.
No, so yeah, that's just the, I guess the grand scope of like what an artist is supposed to operate in and do. No, I think that, it could be done anywhere, honestly, man. Like, and I think the rarefied part of it is the person in the mind of the person that's like creating it. You know what I mean? Like, just because you can have your whole operation in a bag, that does not make that's just a dope ass thing that you can just do. I can set up anywhere and do pirate radio, 100%, which was important because some of the radio waves are sometimes controlled by whatever systems or whatever. So we need pirate radio, we need propaganda, we need truth tellers, or even there's some truths in the joint. So for that reason, I think that it's a beautiful way of operating certain things. Yeah,
that's great. And
like for instance, I could take, if I had a particular piece that I want to just give to the world, I can print it on that plaster paper and just bring it up on walls just because I can. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
And the irony of it is, a lot of times when you're filling out applications for grants, it's like, so is this publicly available? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It can be printed at any size.
I can take a microphone and be out there in the street. So Rob Lee on the streets right here.
Yeah, because there was a radio guy who was on the street, I guess in London, Tim Westwood, he was on the street. You know what I mean? So it's like,
It's like, what do y'all want at this very moment? That's literally the vibes.
Well, they want no rules with rules. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, here's the rules we're making.
Right. Yeah.
So in that, because we're kind of like circling around this a little bit, talk a bit about, because I hear like there's a revolutionary energy there. Mm-hmm. There's a I think it's this, but it's really this sort of energy, which I share. Mm-hmm. Is there a life experience that has shaped that sensibility, like something that you remember as a young person or even early in sort of this stage of the art journey that you're like, yeah, this really either informed, like, no, I was right all along, or this was like, this set you on a direction?
Oh, hell yeah. No. I did an exhibit last year called Black Trust, and it was really about the conversation of like Black people like truly having full belief in each other to like, go for a common goal, which is like the freedom and liberation of their mind, body, and spirit, right? And the art kind of like this, in the poster work, all kind of intertwined in different ways about how we can trust each other and other avenues of like what it means to like build trust. And I still, to this day, even though that show was last summer, I had people that went to that exhibit say, I really thought about that show that you did because like it really kind of like sat with them, right? And then another cat who's a spoken word artist wrote a whole like piece about the whole idea of Black trust. So, those moments, man, like I see like the ideas kind of really sitting with people. Yeah. It's real dope, man, because, I sit with a lot of different Black emotions about I see the world being nuts, and I see Black people kind of being caught up in the midst of it all. And I just want to help, you know what I mean? So whatever I can do now, every exhibit, I do have to like lock in on one idea per year for my main show, but it's always like, for the betterment of the Black people's like hearts and minds, whatever.
And that moves towards the canon,
right?
Like if someone looks at when someone's putting out an album, it's like, here's my full catalog.
Right, yeah. And like, so I do kind of like stack it that way, where so like every year, like just like the main album, and in between that there's like little mixtapes and little freestyles, I guess. Yeah. But like for the most part, the main album is gonna come out in July, August, and it's gonna be the main theory and thesis about what I believe in, as far as I think I need that Black people need to see. So yeah.
So I'm waiting for like the 16-minute maxi dance single version of it. Like.
I'm telling you, man. It's like, but I think that's the thing about art, kind of working itself together, as far as like even like music or anything, is because like that's how people kind of understand how to build, full on like albums or structures, whatever. It's like, this is like a new album coming out, because people understand that aspect of like, all right, here's an artist and he has at least one main thing every year. I think most artists do try to do one main solo exhibit every year. So
talk a little bit more about that piece. It's not process oriented as much as sort of like knowing that it's more of the ideation phase, right? Where I do this, like I'm thinking of, and I'm trying to try something a bit different this season, where, in the past I'm like, I want to do this number of episodes, and these are the people I want to talk to. I'm being a bit more strategic and having these sort of built-in breaks, so I can percolate and just sit with some things and think through some things. What do I really care about? Who do I want to talk to? What is, who can I get? And things of that nature. So when you know that you're going to have like sort of that, the main album, and then sort of these, here's my guest appearances, I'm going to do this, what is it, like 2008 Lil Wayne, I'm just going on everything. What does that ideation look like for you, especially with the time and the idea economy that we're in?
So I always start about a year ahead of myself. So once Black Trust exhibit was done last summer, I was like, all right, I got to start thinking about the next one. Even though I don't have to think about it, because I had other stuff kind of going on for the rest of the year, that I had to do Umbrella, and I do a couple other different like really dope art things in the meantime. But I always save a spot for my next like main theory. I always save a spot for it, and I don't necessarily know how it's going to look until I like finish a piece that kind of like in that vein. I'm like, all right, this is a good start. This is a, I like kind of where this is going, and I just build on just that. I build on some of the like I do some stuff here and there, like in the just messing around, and then the shows normally build themselves. But then I threw myself into another exhibit in April that it was already kind of pre-built, but I'm actually finishing the Ideas and Theories, which is the Underground Railroad, being a functional system for Black people to travel for safety. So I mean, I always give myself a year in advance to kind of like get busy. I'm at this point in that show, I am at this stage where I'm like showing proof of concept. I'm sharing it with certain individuals that kind of like, yo, this is kind of what I'm thinking about, and I'm also going to print for some of the larger ones. So
touch more on it, as far as that, because obviously this is, sort of this month of interviews is focused on sort of, the visual artists. It's going to, these sort of April interviews. This is what I loosely earmarked this month for, and it just so happens, it might be serendipitous, but it just so happens that you have your show, and then, so talk about those ideas and sort of like what was that sort of first, the nugget, if you will?
Well, for which one? For the Underground Railroad show? All right, so for the Underground Railroad show, and I think a lot of my creative process is like kind of seeing what's already out there that pre-exists that I can kind of manipulate or change or alter. Because it's so prominent and important, I can do something with that to make it, to kind of reuse it to make it for Black people, right? So I looked at the underground train system in the UK, their tube, whatever they want to call it, and it's basically an underground railroad. So I just took that, their logo, and I just kind of put railroad underneath underground. Yeah. It started from there. And then I'm like, all right, well, how do I visualize this so people fully understand what it looks like to be an actual underground railroad? So I use old imagery from the old Underground Railroad book of the Runaway Slave and kind of put it underneath it. Then it made a lot more sense, right? And then every time I would like see other train graphics, I would be like, all right, I can use that, manipulate that, and always just in the back of my mind consider the function of like the Underground Railroad in the first place, and then how do I modernize that? So it's just a modern take on just that train system from the Great Migration to the future of like just like transport. Right, and then also what leads into the summer show is like where are those trains going, and they're going to the city that I'm building, right? So it's like a kind of precursor to like the actual full exhibit.
Oh, so it's the warm up.
Yeah, it's a warm up.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, as you're describing it, like I'm seeing all of these different things. Like I'm seeing the Box Brown situation. I'm almost seeing, because you showed me a little still earlier. With even the monorail vibe, because I was like, this gives me 50s comics vibe, but then as you look a bit deeper, it's like, oh, that's some Black shit right there. Okay, got you.
But no, that's the way I like to not disguise it, but the way I like to like weave it into like everyday media, right? To where those like, oh, that's familiar, but wait, that ain't for me though. You know what I mean? So, even like taking it like I showed you one where I hear with. The Popular Science magazine. I'd never seen a cover of Popular Science with a Black man on the cover, being an engineer. Right. You know what I mean? So I think these things are open to be created because it doesn't exist.
And then it has this vintage thing where you initially look at it and you're just like, oh, okay, cool. This is like a historical artifact. And you look closer, you're like, oh, no. There's messaging here that is on the surface over my head, and I'm looking deeper. It's like, no, I love this. Yeah. This is me. This is what have you. Right.
Yeah. And I think it's just again, like with Black art, man, like in individuals we can produce, and there's no rules to it anyway. So it's really like, all right, so what doesn't exist, or what haven't we seen, or I haven't even seen a lot of movies about like Black engineers and like, who constructed these things, right? So I just want to just display it on Black people's hearts, or anybody's heart. They want to like visualize and see this show of like this the ingenuity of Black people to the point where they just like they're trying to find any creative way now using technology of getting Black people towards freedom, and I think that's at the core. It's really about that.
When you said a thing there, like you're not seeing a Black person on Popular Science, what have you, or even I always go to like pop culture, media, and I remember having a conversation off mic with someone in television, and we were talking about like doing a comedy in Baltimore, and he was just like, well, you should. He's like, because obviously you guys are funny. There are Black people there. That's funny. That's this and that. He's like, but it seems like they only care about seeing drug dealers and people getting blicked off.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know why that's the case. Like I've been black for 39 years. There was this one like 6-month period where I was like, I don't know, but no. I've been black my entire life, and the people I'm around, I enjoy comedy. I enjoy a good laugh. I enjoy satire. I enjoy all of these different things, and I don't see it reflected. And something is, I guess, disposable as comedy, because comedy is not looked at as super important, right? But when you get to
I think it depends on the comedy, man. Listen, I grew up hardcore comedy nerd, man. I grew up doing stand-up. I did stand-up comedy for a little while in Philly at the Laugh House, like way back in the day. Me and my friends were always funny in high school, so we decided we wanted to like go try it out. And we did fairly well. We always had these unique, crazy perspectives on it, and you meet you meet the comedians, and you see I love the atmosphere of like the comedy club. I still to this day love it, man. I went to the Improv here in DC, and it looks it's like a dark. Carpet's terrible. The tables are the same. You get a tall ass beer and you just see whatever comedian under those lights.
2 drink minimum, guys.
No, but I think that comedy has a very like beautiful function. I think I wanted to ask you a question about that because I think I was having a conversation with my wife about this, like black people in satire, and how we don't fully know how to use it yet, or we know how to use it, but like other black folks are not kind of like down with like you making fun of certain things.
I have noticed that. I find like, you're like, I try to work on this, and just to clarify, when I was saying like, I guess comedy's it's not treated as such.
Okay,
I think that's more my thing, because I'm very invested in comedy. So when one of the things I do when I'm uncomfortable in a situation, right, I'm trying to use comedy to get myself comfortable. And as soon as someone is like laughing along with me, it's like, all right, gotcha. And it's sort of that. So, you might sit there like, all right, I might have written this bit right here for my introduction or something along those lines. And I look for who's the people that get it. They're like, okay, that's really funny. Or who's the people that get it with a delay. Those are the people I'm actually want to be friends with. It's like, you didn't get it initially, and it's like, oh, that's really, you're a silly bastard. And the ones that just stone faced, I was like, nah, my podcast ain't for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, there's some subtleness there. It's not as, and I hear this from people. And I don't know if you hear this, but I hear this from people where they're like, well, you have to be really boisterous and out there, hitting people over the head with what your message is. And I was like, I don't know if I need to I don't know. I feel like I can do the thing that I'm comfortable with, versus just being very like, this is a black podcast that covers black things.
I think the heading over the head part is just consistency. If you consistently do the same brilliant thing, then you don't have to bombard people with like the idea. It's just, this is just what I do. Right.
It's the sensibilities are baked in, and then I find like, I do the things that are of interest for me, and the perspective is going to be from this angle. And, I find like, even going back to the sort of comedy piece, when, as we're in the same tribe, as it were, you start talking about like references to the 90s, X-Men, things of the sort. And I'll have a reference, like, I think it was like, so who's working in this department of G.I. Joe?
Right.
And you see the people that are like, okay, you're stupid, that's funny.
Right.
And other people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, bro, what? What are you doing? Or even at times, because, I always get trying to wrapped up and try to get pulled into the improv space, right? And I observe the comedians there, and I'm like, all right, so what's this bit of? Okay, that's really funny. And trying to go in there and taking off I try my damnedest to take off all of the biases. And just like, all right, is this funny? That's where I'm starting at. Is this funny?
I think improv does have a funny line where it's that way, because I tried improv once, and I'm like, nah, this ain't the way I kind of like construct my comedic. I need more time to think about what I'm saying and doing. Now, some people are really good at that improvisation. They just can get it. Some people are hilarious at it. Some people are just, it's just like almost, they're just all just kind of playing around on stage. Which is also cool. So, I'll leave improv alone, man.
Those are different skill sets.
It's a different skill set.
And I think there are other complementary things that can come from it. Like, I'm very much I'm a problem solver, think on my feet, and I think most creative folks are. But that's a 301 class improv.
That's a whole different aspect, because you also never know, because you're basing on what the next person's doing. So they have a whole different setup that they have going on in their mind also. And if you can get it where it's like, symbiotic, where all kind of all on the same page. That takes time. That's when you have a team, an improv squad. But if you're just like people you just kind of throwing together and y'all gotta come up with something, that's a whole different.
You're not throwing up those lobs yet.
Yeah,
like in basketball.
And you gotta know everybody's strengths. But I do appreciate it though. I do appreciate it. But stand-up comedy has always just been that thing for me, just because as a kid, growing up watching Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor and Chris Rock and Mooney. Some of the white cats too, like Carlin and them cats. I watched everybody, but I just, I was just enamored with that business, man. So 100%. Much as a kid, man. On top of also loving comic books and film and all type of music and all type of in sports and all type of other stuff. But it's just that thing where I think in the '90s, all that was just they popularized everything. So everything was kind of out there in its full kind of breath. When
you see the things start coming together, when those things start converge, I would imagine. Like I was, hell yeah. When you see, what is it? Remember the old, little penny commercials? When you see, the streams are crossing.
Yeah.
Or you see, is that Spike Lee in this Jordan commercial?
Yeah, no, exactly, yeah.
And you start having those things, and from that era, it starts finding itself into what you're doing now, because everything just repeats.
Yeah.
So, it's just I'm adding to it. I'm adding this little notch to it. So when I can have a conversation with someone based on it, and I like the way that you described it, the process, what goes into all of the work. It's like my life, actually.
Yeah,
so when I have a conversation with someone who is in fine art, right, and they're in, I guess in when you think of classical music, you think of something very rarefied. You wearing a tuxedo and all of that. And I it's this dude in Baltimore, and he's in other places, but I've only seen him in Baltimore, a dude named Steve Hackman. And he does this BSO fusion stuff. And it's classical music with hip hop. And I'm like, those things generally, what was that process like? What was that pitch process like? But naturally, I gravitate towards it. And I just say this before moving to this next thing. I remember going to the first show of his that I was invited to, and it was Drake and Tchaikovsky. I'm writing my questions for the interview that I'm going to inevitably do with him.
Yeah.
I hadn't booked the interview, hadn't reached out. I just had questions.
I got to talk to this guy.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it just clicks on, in terms of the sensibilities, just, these things shouldn't go together, but here's how they do.
Yeah, I think that is, now, maybe I have a personal bias. I think that's the uniqueness of Black people's minds, because we've been absorbing so much and have to learn so much, on both sides. We have to sometimes learn about these classical world things that we just had to learn because it's world history and we learned that in school. But then also we have a secondary education, which is all the Black stuff that we absorb, and then we somehow see a way to using both of them at the same time, and also kind of using this thing that will be foreign to Black people and kind of lead them into it with something that they're very familiar with. Yeah. And I like doing that with a lot of work that I do. Yeah. It's because I want to just kind of bridge that gap. Even that Underground Railroad is just one of those examples of here are two things that are absolutely separate that I can kind of bring together and fuse into a seamless piece of work.
Here's the connections, and you just find those instances where there was a podcast that I used to do, and I may have mentioned this previously, either off mic or on, but to you, Unofficially Black. And during that podcast, for the time in which I did it, and the idea was being told by people that look like me and my co-hosts that Black people don't do that.
Right.
And it's Black people don't like wrestling? Wrestling. The thing with, okay, cool, the sports thing.
That's not true at all.
All right, cool. So I'm curious about this one, because I've run into this, and we touched on it a little bit. People, actually, no, let me go back a little bit. This question, and we touched on this one a little bit too. So, being a DC guy now, being a Philadelphia guy just inherently, from each of those cities, they're different. Obviously, I like Philly a lot. I think Philly is the next level of Baltimore in some ways.
They're very similar.
What is it about either city, whether it be DC, whether it be Philly, that kind of inspires your work, kind of adds to your work, maybe and informs your work, or even has some sort of impact on it? Now I want to do that. Tell me about that.
Well, I would say that what I've learned exhibiting in DC is, I believe this is one of those cities everybody thinks or believes that they are a smart, brilliant person, right? So you get a lot of that super educated kind of theory on on the work and what you're doing. So I think those conversations are always unique because, I'm always very curious about what the world did to a black person's mind and how they got there and some of the questions that they ask. So I think DC is unique in that way because I'm not saying that the questions I got in Philly were not smart. I'm just saying that it's a lot more people in DC that kind of frequent these things that really believe they're brilliant. So they want to also have this very deep conversation about sometimes a piece that doesn't even require that much deep kind of thought. Because that happened many times. I did something that I just did it just to do it, but actually I learned. I'm like, damn, maybe I did do something. Maybe I don't know how smart I am. You know what I'm saying? There is that aspect. But Philly, I think for me anyway, is I just always appreciate the honesty of it all. Because if you want some bullshit, they will let you know.
That's where that Baltimore similarity is at.
Yeah, yeah. And also Philly's one of those cities where, depending on what you do, any nigga think they can do it.
Yeah.
I can fucking do that shit.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Ain't that special.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So there's that, man. But all love either way, man. I miss home a lot of times just for that reason, because even going out to bars and clubs in DC compared to Philly. Yeah. Philly it just has an air that I'm used to that. I'm used to that tension of this whole atmosphere just being at any time could be terribly violent.
I mean, it's one of those things.
It's weird, dog. Yeah, but it's just one of those things.
It's one of those things where now I gotta prove it again.
Right. Yeah. I'm home now. I did a show in Philly not too long ago, and but this was a chill, really nice chill gallery, so it wasn't as intense. But the one I did in the middle of West Philly on 52nd Street, anybody can go in there and just check it out. And they were just they I'll fuck with this. I mean, they wasn't necessarily going to buy it because it wasn't that type of scenario, but they just they got what I was saying. They yeah.
It's a top tier thing where, to your point about the smart people thing, that's really true because I remember it was one time I was down here, I ran into a few different people and they were telling me what my podcast was to them. Yeah. And I'm like, I just be talking to interesting people. That's pretty much it. They know more than I do. Yeah. I fake it most of the time. Mm-hmm. They said, no, what you're really doing is, I was like, sure. Yeah, exactly. Yep, that's exactly what I planned on doing. You know what? I never heard about it that way. You know what? You should wite a review. Right. Let them know. That happened to me before too. I was talking to this lady. I forgot she's an older woman. I think maybe was older, or she might have been around the same age. But she just had all these great points. I'm like, yo, you want to write an interview about this? Because everything you're saying is great, and I would love to be able to explain it this way, but I don't know. Ghost interviewer. Yeah, no, it was kind of crazy. But yeah, there's a lot of that, man. But I do appreciate it just for that reason because I learned so much from just what I show and what it does to people. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just learned so much. So this next question is sort of a two-parter, and I got two more after this. So this two-parter one, and I'm going to do my best to combine them. So obviously, the podcast, The Truth in His Art. Mm-hmm. What does the role of truth play in your work, how you approach your work, so on? And, we've heard about red flags, we heard about green flags and all of those. Creatively, what are your non-negotiables? As far as what I do, or as far as, even if you were going to work with a gallery or something. Okay. All right, well, I don't bang with that. I'll start with the first question first, as far as the truth, man. I think the truth is what kind of locks in and protects my work because I try to add as much real history as possible. Yeah. So that kind of even if the people want to say, oh, that's just made up, I say, well, research it and see what people lying. Yeah. So I think there's truth in that part that I just always got to have in there with every piece that I do. There's always some truth in there from the individuals to the idea that, or to the fact that this doesn't exist and it needs to, or why doesn't it exist, is another level of truth that I try to produce and present because well, why haven't we had a brother on the cover of Popular Science being an engineer? Yeah. Why would we not want to see that? I want to see that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I think there's a truth within that. Now, as far as red flags or green flags, I mean, I really judge it based. I normally won't work with a gallery until I kind of get a feel for it. So I'll go to a show before I even have one there to kind of see how the curator is or the gallery owner is or whatever. Just kind of check their temperature, see what they're kind of showing. But if they ask me to change anything or change the language or whatever, nah, I can't change anything at this point because people expect me to be honest about everything that I produce and show. So yeah, no. That's legit. I've had that a few times. Mm-hmm. As you can see, I'm a large black man, right. And it's sort of this thing where, because at the same time I'm shy too, which no, you're not. You do a podcast. I was like, yes. It's usually one person or it's behind a glass where I confront. Right. But sort of the point is, I've been, asked, well, why don't you just rah-rah on stage and people over the head with it? Or, I talk about one of the drivers in doing this initially was I didn't like that shit that Trump said about Baltimore.
Right.
And I was like, I'm going to do a podcast in many instances trying to disprove that sentiment about Baltimore and I think cities that are similar to it.
Right.
That is sort of the byline. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was asked to do a talk about sort of doing that podcast, the start of it, the genesis, all of it. He said, can you keep all of the Trump stuff out though? And I was like, so you want me to change actually what the story is?
Yeah, now you're changing history.
Yeah, and I was like, nah, I just don't think this is a fit. And initially I said something completely different, and then I deleted that email and then wrote a better one that was not as spicy.
Oh man, there's always things telling like that. You know what? Nah,
I'll keep that draft.
I'm gonna keep that. Decorum. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I understand.
And that's sort of the thing, or what have you. And and that's why I put that question in there, the whole truth component, because. When I'm doing this, it's just like, well, people ask me all the time.
Yeah.
Can I curse on this? I was like, whatever's true for you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Be you. And, it's on me as the host not to be like, man, all that. It's never really my lane in this. But, when I'm outside of this and having a real conversation with someone, those are the people that, kind of going back to the comedy thing I was saying earlier, who your people are.
Right.
And then who you can actually chat with. Like after this, you and I could get a coffee and have like a beer after this. Well, it's noon, but still, my point is, is that not everyone is in that same thing. So it's a kind of figuring out who can you roll with. And I think in some instances, during these podcasts, it's just like I'm interested in creative work, and that's the context in it. Sometimes I get friends out of this, sometimes I don't. But I don't lead with, hey, let's be boys, and now let me ask you some weird questions or have you.
To add on to the truth component, man, I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different artists, man, and I think that sometimes you can tell artists when it's not being true or not being serious. You can just see it, and then also even how the way they talk about the work or discuss it. They don't really care about what they're saying or showing. They're just doing something for the times, or they're trying to be timely just to get views.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even people that. Let's say a celebrity passes away and they just do a whole couple of different pieces of just paintings of Nipsey Hussle or Kobe. It's just of course they probably care about these people, but I think it's just there's not much truth other than you just want to just produce something to get people to see it.
You didn't see all those murals when Carl Weathers passed away. It's like, man,
right.
Rocky,
No, and that's a motherfucking Apollo Creed.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Philly. Rocky has a statue
100%
that people still visit to this day, which always kind of blurs those lines of movies being real to people or not. That's a whole different conversation for another day. We could talk about that for a long time, man.
Philadelphia and Detroit to a lesser extent, because if they get that actual statue of RoboCop, that's like, you guys are just cartoon cities. You're not real places.
Right. Yeah. Even though RoboCop is an interesting city, and a lot of my show in the summertime is based on creating a mega city. Yeah. And that old school 60s idea, man. I want to build this goddamn whole city. Or Walt Disney saying he had a whole display. I'm building this motherfucking amusement park. Yeah. And he was just showing it to people, right? Yeah. And then until he got full funding to actually get the land to do it. So I like that component of the next phase of the work that I'm doing. It's really dope. I'm gonna show you the ideas in full function. I'm gonna have I'm gonna have a toy train inside the train show, just to kind of so kids can understand this whole train system that I'm trying to operate.
It's something about that piece of showing someone what the work could be. It's very similar to, because you're wearing your Brooklyn hat. Mm-hmm. It's the Spike Lee thing of going out there and pitching. Yeah. Of still having to do that, and even, I remember it was a point, and especially the sort of being timely sort of thing. I always joke about it because podcasters are funny. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, oh yeah, how are you going to do your, entanglement podcast? And you're going to talk about the same thing.
And, okay, as far as whatever's going on.
Yeah, right, it's just and part of it is you have to be that because of the nature of what it is. But also you can choose to do something different, something that's has more, I guess, gets merit or what have you, and that's not as disposable. But this notion of showing someone what the work is, whatever that work might be, if you're pitching, and you're showing this is what my vision is.
Right.
This is why I'm I don't need to audition for you.
Yeah.
When someone's like, so tell me about your analytics. I was like, you don't care about them, so why would I tell you? That's this is the number to care about. I've done this many interviews in this many markets. What do you want?
Yeah.
And I do remember at a point where I thought it was a really cool idea when, someone did they read their resume as a podcast. And I was like, that's kind of cool. You just send it to them. It's like, here's a different file. It's like, that's a different vibe. It's a different energy. And especially if you're applying for, like, here's a sample. Here's my portfolio, if you will. So this one is, and I've done this by virtue of being down here today. Do you have a creative bubble? And if so, how often do you step away from it, hit that reset button? Do you do like creative fasting? Talk about that a little bit.
Creative bubble. I mean, or like when I get to the point where I don't want to do anything anymore?
Well, more so like, like I will do most of my interviews for a while. They were all at home. Right. I'm in my like creative space.
Oh, okay.
And then my context in many ways is shaped like that because this is my reality. But when I step away from it, it's like, oh, I'm learning something. I get new questions or I go to a different environment, or even this when you're doing, I think, this concept of, I like to call creative fasting. It's like, I'm not going to do anything for a while. I'm just going to do stuff for fun.
Yeah. So, my creative fasting, just various things. I just either just shut it off, or I just say, I'm not worried about doing nothing right today, or I'm like, well, the work is already done. I can chill. I don't got to tinker with it right now. But how I kind of like release and decompress. Video games still help, man. Like I play MLB The Show. That's
you get it.
MLB The Show is one of those like games. Like it's a hyper focused baseball game. You just like right now, what else am I playing? Assassin's Creed, the new one. Just like ways of just like, but also Assassin's Creed, you always learn about history, and it's always that's a weird game for that reason because they always imply like a lot of history and a lot of like true facts about like the terrain that you're kind of like existing in at that time. Other than that, definitely just like watching the movies that I either new or like classic movies that I've watched as a kid. They always help me just like decompress. I just like talking, just like laugh. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's just there's multiple ways of just kind of getting away from it, but I'm very much attached to the work because I do work in the house too, so it's like it's right next to me. But I do take time to like super like just like really chill, spend time with my daughters, spend time with the wife, man. Just chill, man. And like for the first time in I guess forever since I've been going on like vacation and shit like that, I actually just like didn't bring my laptop and do anything. Yeah. And this was like this last August. We went to St. Thomas or St. whatever it was, St. Martin and the Willis. So I mean, like I just took that time to chill. But this time of year right now, I'm hyper focused on like both these main projects, from the train show to the show, the city show. So it's I don't know what to call it yet. It's either city or state, or it's a place. You know what I mean, that I'm creating for Black people.
Yeah. The bubble thing is interesting though. Yeah. Like when you get that reset. Yeah. It's just like whew, I'm away from this, so. Just more of the ripping and running of it. Like,
Oh, that's a lot, man. Like, so this past couple of weeks, I've been doing, like, meetups and, like, in meetings and interviews. Not interviews, but, like, just meeting with other creative people about just, like, future plans. Like, a lot of that, I'm like, damn, there's a lot of meetings this week, right?
Sorry. And I used to have at a point, and my girl would talk, she's like, how many interviews you got this week? Yeah. I was like, I got 18 interviews this week. Yeah. She was like, and your day job. Right. And what other social things that you had? Because they're, when you look at the calendar, the Google calendar, those are different colors.
Yeah, no, they all, and it's funny, man. It's like, well, then you think to yourself, am I the operation?
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. And I was thinking about that today. I'm like, damn, I'm like the operation. Like, on top of the fact that I have to do all the other part, which is create the beautiful work. You know what I mean? So
that's the part of it that I think when I go through. And like I said, I got to a stage where it's almost like, these serious people. Mm-hmm. I'll have this thing with some folks that, yeah, bro, can't wait to be on a pod. I'm like, sure. It's like, I've invited you 5 times. You stood me up all 5 times. Right. And it's more of I'm always appreciative for anyone having any interest in what I do, right? But also it's just like, I am a serious person. Right, yeah. I have a time investment. We're all creatives, right? Yeah. And it's just like, I put in the time and I'm ready and prepared. Right. And sort of, I don't get that time back. So it's almost like, to use the wrestling ref, back to the line. You lost your title match. Yeah, man. Listen, we could do a full show about how much I love and enjoy wrestling, man. It's like look, real life comic books, like in real time, right in front of your face. It's insane. It's an insane business. But but anytime. Another thing that I do, anytime I'm feeling like I need like any kind of like laughs or whatever, I can literally go back to the Attitude Era of wrestling. So you get it. And I can laugh legitimately, because me and my boys, like, cause, full disclosure, my parents had an illegal cable box, and one does. I was so we had the house in the neighborhood that any pay-per-view. Yeah. My boys came over and we watching. Yo, Royal Rumbles on the night. We watching. I remember when Owen Hart died. Yeah.
You watched that shit. It was on, yeah. I remember Hell in a Cell. With, I'm not going to go through it.
Look, man, I might hit you up like, bro, you trying to go to Philly in April?
Oh, well, for WrestleMania? Oh, listen.
I mean, it's multiple wrestling shows could happen.
Yeah, man. And then Philly also had ECW way back in the day.
Oh, yeah. That was one of my first shows was at ECW Arena.
Word. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, you know what time it is? Yeah, you know.
All right, so let me hit you with this last real question before I go to those rapid fire ones. And the last real one goes a little something like this. So pursuing art, obviously, isn't easy. You're doing a full-time thing. And, being like, it's big business as well. And it's always just sort of this time thing. The expectations are, consistently putting something out there, having a presence, the social media component. But then at times that conflicts with being an artist and putting out good work and putting out interesting work.
Right.
From your vantage point, and this is more sort of the advice piece, how can artists succeed in the world today with those considerations being there? Always be making, always be showing.
Well, I think that really comes down to, the artist making the decision of I'm gonna do what I wanna do. If I feel like, posting and sharing today, I will. But, I guess you gotta be present, to show your face that shows you are working, but I don't think that there's any kind of rules to it, man. I legit operate in this space where I don't follow. I follow my own rules. Yeah. Sometimes my rules do align with other people's rules.
Sure.
But I don't do shit that I don't want to do. You ain't gonna fucking give me on some bullshit.
That was real Philly, by the way.
Yeah, because it's just funny that way, man. And these people will pull and if you allow them to, they'll move you around. You know what I mean? They'll put you in some bullshit, man. I do basically what I want to do.
But I think one of the things you said there that was really good, and all of it 100% on, but they move you around. Yeah. Because they're the ones that's trying to play chess.
Right. No, and that's the thing about it, man. I'm not talking shit about any curator in particular. I'm just talking about how the curators play their own also funny chess game too, about where they put artists, what artists they get, what kind of shows they put on, where they put the shows on and everything. Yeah. It's a very crazy game, and I think that I don't have necessarily a full-on clicker team that I'm with. It's just I'm dolo. I'm by myself. Yeah. And I just so I have to protect myself because of that.
100%.
So yeah, I don't do I pick and choose.
I dig it.
Yeah.
All right.
I ain't no asshole though.
Look. I'm trying to get back to that lane. No.
I'm super nice, but I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes to every fucking thing.
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can't.
Because it means you're saying no to yourself in some instances.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes the work that I produce is not going to align with other people's work that they have in these shows, so it just doesn't always make sense. But
you got it.
That's why I mostly do solo shit, and then some group shows here and there.
All right. So I got 4 rapid fire questions for you. Right. And as you remember, you don't want to overthink these.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So what would be the number one thing that you enjoy about being an artist?
Oh man, sharing ideas.
Where does great art happen? The interesting work. Where is that happening?
In the subconscious.
So you answered that the way I was hoping you would. Because some people man, what's the right answer to say? It's all right, hold on, chill out.
It happens in that funny part of the back of your mind where all that stuff is kind of sitting there that you've kind of known and forgotten.
Mine would be it happens between shots of the Rob Lee cocktail at Forge Eatery.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
What was the last movie you watched?
Ooh, last movie I watched. Oh, what the fuck did I just watch? Book of Clarence.
Okay.
Oh man. Oh no, have you seen it?
I've not.
Oh man, it's incredible for a lot of different reasons, okay. And especially because it needed to be made. That's why. But yeah, Book of Clarence. Lastly,
favorite comfort meal.
Oh, favorite comfort meal. Used to be cheesesteaks until I gave up meat, man. So now my wife makes crab cakes and them joints are delicious. Or shrimp and grits.
Okay, you mentioned 2 things that are on my top 10 list. Shrimp and grits, crab cakes.
Anywhere I go, any state, north or south, let me try shrimp and grits. I know what you got going on over here.
Oh, this is why we're friends. I realized this. I do the same thing.
Right, yeah.
I go in there snobbishly.
Yeah, I judge people in the shrimp and grits.
Well, they're
always made different though.
Look, man, we can have a big.
I went to a spot in Baltimore that they do theirs on a skillet type plan. It was a spot. It was called. I forgot where it was. It was somewhere downtown. I was staying there with my wife one time.
I might know the place. I might besmirch the place a little bit. We'll see. We've almost got 4 separate podcasts out of this conversation.
Right on, yeah.
It's it's a wrestling podcast, then it's big shrimp and grits.
That's why I like talking to you, brother.
Much appreciated, bro. And as we wrap up in these final moments, one, I want to thank you for again coming on and blessing the pod. And 2, Telefine folks where they can check you out, social media, website, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
All right, so website, MauriceJamesJr.com, pretty simple. Instagram is art4, the black market. So if you put in art4, you should see my name pop up. And like I said, man, I don't know when this is going to air, but next exhibit is going to be April 12th in Union Station. Come through. It's a really kind of like insightful, innovative show about the Underground Railroad and where it's taking black people. And then moving forward, just getting ready for the summer exhibit, the larger show. So busy, I'm locked in. I feel great. I feel slightly mentally exhausted, but I feel also very inspired to like get these ideas out because I think people need to see them. So, yeah.
And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Maurice James Jr. for again coming on The Truth in His Heart. And for Maurice, I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.